Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the very first installment of the Vicente Sotto lecture series for 2026. Please make yourselves comfortable as we prepare to enjoy another cultural feast. Before we begin, I'd like to remind the audience of a few house rules. One, make sure that your mics are on mute to avoid any disruptions in the course of the program. Second, please do not forget to answer the evaluation form before the program ends. A link to the form will be posted in the chat box below. Your certificate of participation will be sent to you via email after you have submitted the evaluation form. Thank you. Let's begin with a prayer, to be followed with the singing of the national anthem. Let us put ourselves in the holy presence of God as we say, in the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. O Lord my God, in my study, let me learn prudence. Let me learn the discipline of the mind. Let me seek to understand that which is just and honorable. Let me learn purity of mind and heart. Let me focus on what is excellent. Let me put what I learn into practice. Let my learning move from my head to my heart and out through my hands, so that I may serve you well. I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Bayang mag-iiw, pelas ng silanganan, alam ng puso, sa lilig mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duwit ka ng magiting, sa manlulupig, di ka pasisingil. Sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mo ang may nilagang tulad, awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang kislap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na naniningning. Ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may magdidilim. Lupa ng araw na luwal ating pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Aming ligaya na pag may mag-aapi, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
To you mercy we sing, our song shall always ring. You who set the mind astir of our learning divine joy, our alma mater dear, we pledge our love sincere. Firm to be, stand and true, glory to God tonight and you. We promise faith and love, and all the Lord above. To God we shout our song of praise, to Him our voice we raise. To lead us to the Lord be now, forever blessed.
Okay, maayong buntag kanatong tanan. For the benefit of those who've only joined us now, the Vicente Sotto Lecture Series is a monthly lecture series on the literary, cultural, and historical heritage of Cebu. For almost 2 years now, we have been hearing from esteemed researchers and writers on different aspects of Cebuano studies, from the pre-war Cebuano fantasy novel to special research archives, to Cebuano Christmas traditions, local cinema studies, and Cebuano poetry, history, traditions, among others. It is a new year with new frontiers, and January is a high point in Cebuano cultural festivities, with the upcoming Sinulog Festival that I am sure many of us are looking forward to. Today, we will be hearing from a very distinguished guest, Miss Cecilia Manguerra Brainard. But before we begin, here to welcome us today and to officially open the program is Sir Jao Dasik.
So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Happy New Year to all of you. A warm and heartfelt welcome as we gather here today for the very first installment of the Vicente Sotto Lecture Series for the year 2026, organized, of course, by the Cebuano Studies Center of the University of San Carlos. So, to give you a bit of background for those, especially for those just joining us, the Cebuano Studies Center is at its heart a center for research on all aspects of Cebuano culture. It functions as a special library to house the various source materials in Cebu, as well as the predominantly Cebuano-speaking areas in the country. It's also a research center devoted to studies on Cebu, specifically in the areas of the humanities and the social sciences, while also acting as a special office that assists in the promotion of Cebuano culture and the arts. So throughout the years, the Cebuano Studies Center has played an active role in enhancing cultural awareness within the Cebuano community, and not only through its functions as a special public library and a center of educational activities, but also through the assistance it has extended to local governments and various community associations. So the center strives for research and preservation in its commitment to Cebuano culture. And one such example of that commitment is the monthly Vicente Soto lecture series, the one we're having now, revived under the directorship of Dr. Hope Pugh. So the monthly lecture series, as mentioned by Art initially earlier, it aims to add to the discourse on Cebuano culture, arts, and history. And with these lectures, the center hopes to make the rich cultural heritage of Cebu more visible to the general public and sort of create avenues where people can discuss with various esteemed speakers on or about Cebuano studies. And today we have the honor to listen to a lecture from one such expert steeped in knowledge and experience about Cebuano literature. It's my pleasure to welcome award-winning novelist and editor, Miss Cecilia Manguerra Brainard. We hope that through this lecture, you, our dear viewers, gain a deeper appreciation for Cebuano identity. On behalf of the Cebuano Studies Center, I welcome you all today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that warm welcome, Sir Jao. We will now come to the part of the program that I am sure many of us are looking forward to. Please be reminded that there will be an open forum after the lecture, so please feel free to post your questions in the chat box while the lecture is going on so that we can take them up during the open forum. So, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker. Cecilia Manguerra Brainard is the award-winning author and editor of over 22 books, including the novels When the Rainbow Goddess Wept, Magdalena, and The Newspaper Widow, and her selected short stories. Ms. Brainard has worked with Asian American youths for which she received a Special Recognition Award from the Los Angeles Board of Education. She has also received awards from the California State Senate, 21st District, several USIS grants, a California Arts Council Fellowship, an Outstanding Individual Award from the City of Cebu, Philippines, Brody Arts Fund Award, a City of Los Angeles Cultural Grant, and many more. The books she has written and edited have also won awards: the Philippine National Book Award, the Gintong Aklat Award, and the International Gourmand Award, among others. As of 2024, her novels and selected short stories have been translated into Arabic, Azerbaijani, Greek, Japanese, North Macedonian, Portuguese, Serbian, Turkish, and Slovenian, ranking her among the top translated Filipino authors of the Philippine Works in Translation database. Some short stories of hers have been translated into Finnish. She runs a small press, PALH, or the Philippine American Literary House. In 2025, she attended the Frankfurt Book Fair, where the Philippines was a guest of honor, and she was invited by her Brazilian publisher to attend the Porto Alegre Book Award Fair in Brazil. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause, please.
Good morning. It's actually evening where I am, but so I'll pretend it's morning. I have to thank Dr. Hope Yu for inviting me to do this lecture. Thank you very much, Hope. And I have to thank Mr. Zhao Dasig, who has taken very good care of me. Thank you, Zhao. And Art, nice introduction. And I really like that prayer and the I haven't heard the our Philippine song for a while, and it was very moving. Thank you. So I'm going to talk to you not only about the Frankfurt Book Fair, which I attended, and the Porto Alegre Book Fair, but about international participation of Philippine authors, Philippine publishers, Philippine literature. In the 1990s, I was in the executive board of PEN PEN USA West, and I represented them in Barcelona, in Spain, in three delegations. And so, and of course, I've been in other book fairs and so on. So I picked up some ideas and I would like to share them with you. I prepared a PowerPoint, but I warned Jiao that I'm not an academic, so I'm not very used to it. So hopefully it will work for us. I'm gonna put it on right now. And hopefully we have no problem. And let's see here. Okay, how are we doing?
Okay.
Is that fine, Jiao?
Yes, ma'am, the PowerPoint's visible.
Okay, and okay. So in 2024, I went to Frankfurt, and so did Hope, Dr. Yu and Dr. Relampagos. And so we were together, and we really had some productive as well as fun times in Frankfurt. I just show this picture just to sort of share it with you about this moment that we had over there. So these are what I wanted to share with you, my observations, and I wanted to address some questions, or we can talk about them. How are Filipino publishers and authors perceived in global spaces? What are the opportunities and challenges when we are representing Philippine literature abroad? And is involvement in such international book fairs worthwhile? How relevant is it? Is it relevant to Filipino literature? So I thought I'd give you a background of the Frankfurt Book Fair first. So the Frankfurt Book Fair is like a big event. It claims to be the largest book fair in the world with over 240,000 visitors annually. It usually it happens about October for 5 days. The first 3 days are exclusively for publishers, literary agents, and scouts. This is a trade fair. It's primarily it's like a marketplace for book rights. So there's a lot of selling, buying, and wheeling and dealing for the first 3 days. The last 2 days are open to the public for book signings, book sales. There are book talks too, but the purpose of the book fair is really for trading book rights. So Philippine participation in the Frankfurt Book Fair began in 2015, primarily because of Karina Velasco, Neni Santa Romana Cruz, Annie Del Almario, who had this vision of Philippine participation in there. And at some point, they engaged Senator Loren Legarda, who brought in more funding, and the participation became kind of like a bigger deal. And for last year, 2025, it was Charisse Aquino Togare who was executive director. I have to tell you that every year, the Frankfurt Book Fair has a country guest of honor. So last year, 2025, the Philippines was the guest of honor. And so there's a lot of opportunities to be highlighted when a country is the guest of honor. It allows for the showcasing of literature and culture. It boosts international rights sales. So it's a big deal. In this big place to be the guest of honor, you have use of the pavilion, which is a kind of a special place. It costs. There's a fee to be you apply. A guest of honor is chosen, and there is a fee of approximately 20.8 million pesos to be the guest of honor. The Philippines participated. So there were various events aside from literary events. We had Igorots in Bahags, and we had an epic singer, and they had kind of like a jeepney. It was an area where they had an outdoor stage, and they had this jeepney, and they had eateries, and so it was kind of a hangout place. And I'm just showing to you some pictures of me and some delegates, just to sort of give you an idea. So there were very many book talks, panel discussions, film screenings, concerts, exhibitions, performances. It really went on even before and after the 5-day event in October. I'm showing you an event that I was in. These are my foreign publishers who went there so that we could launch some of these translations at that time in last October. This is my agent here who actually did this wonderful thing here. Okay. There was, I don't know at all if you paid attention, maybe the writers know about it, but there was some kind of brouhaha, a fracas over at Frankfurt because there was a boycott. What happened was I don't know if you recall, but there was some issue with the Palestinians and the Israelis. There was a political issue, and the Filipinos sided with the Palestinians. And so many publishers and authors and so on were asking for participants to boycott. They were asking for delegates not to go to the Frankfurt Book Fair. The reason was that actually the Frankfurt Book Fair sided with the Israelis. So there was this sort of political literary quarrel going on, and it was a big deal, especially when you were there. There was a kind of a daily report of who put what in social media and this kind of thing. And the end result of it was that some writers and publishers did not go to Frankfurt. They supported the boycott. And some of them went, but they compromised. So they went there, but then they tried to bring in the Palestinian stories and poetry reading and so on. And there were some who were very diehard apologists, if you want to call it that. And they supported Philippine participation 100% and more in Frankfurt. And I will not go into names. If you're curious, you can look them up because we have a long story here to tell. After the Frankfurt Book Fair, I write for Positively Filipino, and they gave me an assignment to make a report about that book fair. And I actually did a lot of research, some of which I'm sharing with you. And I'm just going to share this with you because it's important. So one of the things was that some people mentioned, and which I experienced, is that the NBDB does not have a conflict of interest policy. There are people who are Philippine publishers and authors were hired by the NBDB to be part of the guest of honor core team. And at the same time, they were in government payroll. Many of them got many grants connected to being in the committees and be working there. Many opportunities to travel, etc., etc. So there was there was no conflict of interest. There were other complaints, and some of which I actually heard. For foreign publishers, there were opportunities for foreign publishers of subsidy grants to translate work, and many of them complained because they did not get paid on time. This one I experienced, there was no clearly published criteria for selecting Philippine delegation. Last year in 2024, when Hope, you and I were there was a very clear announcement of deadlines of when you should submit your application to become a delegate, and so on and so forth. And for 2025, there was none of that. Suddenly, people were just assigned to be in the delegation. There were some 100 over 100 funded delegates, but in fact, there were over 400 delegates who showed up. Most of those paid their own way. I paid my own way because I was not invited. I actually had reason to be there because of my my publishers who were there and so on. So, but moving on, there were issues like these booths cost money at the fair, and so people were complaining about why we had a Philippine stand, but at the same time, there was money spent on comic stand. Why 20 media people were funded. They were there, and basically their job was to sort of run around and cover a few people. Aside from that, a German media company was also hired. There were issues of some authors who went to Frankfurt, some of them from the United States and other parts of the world, and they were not acknowledged, not really recognized. There was a Filipino publisher whom I knew who was refused to display the books that he had brought all the way from the United States. I finally talked to somebody and the person was able to display it. I just mentioned that really because these were some of the things that came up along with the boycotting and other issues. I will talk a little bit more about the NBDB later on when we look at the broader picture of what international participation is about. So the other thing I was involved in was going to the Porto Alegre Book Fair in Brazil. Now, in comparison, this book fair was a smaller event. Instead of 240,000 people attending it, it's around 20,000. It was outdoor, so it was right here. You can see they had tents and they had booths. They had some buildings that they used for talks and other events. So the atmosphere at the Porto Alegre was quite different. It was very kind, welcoming, warm, versus the Frankfurt Book Fair, which was really kind of a lot to do with business. Frankfurt really is like a marketplace. People go in there, literary agents, publishers, scouts, and they're there to do business. They're there to buy and sell book rights. Book rights would include movie rights, subsidiary rights, translation rights. So there's a lot inherent in books that can actually be sold, just like you're selling peanuts or something like that. So I'm showing to you this picture. This is my publisher who published two of my books, the selected short stories and my first novel, When the Rainbow Goddess Wept. And this is his wife, Ana, who translated my work into Portuguese. They speak Portuguese in Brazil, although it's slightly different from the Portuguese in Portugal. And these are their children. And Mai Khaled was a writer, a novelist from Cairo, who was my companion. We traveled together. So here's the book that the translations, When the Rainbow Goddess Wept, translated into Portuguese, selected short stories translated into Ismay and myself. So one of the questions that I wanted, so we have the idea that the difference between the big business like Frankfurt Book Fair and a kind of a warmer, smaller book fair that focuses on book selling, promoting publishers, promoting authors, and run not by like business people, but by local literary folk who have been doing this since this was their 71st Porto Alegre Book Fair. So after Porto Alegre, Mai and I went to São Paulo, which is their capital, and we spent a few days there and to sightsee. You know, Brazil is very far away, so you might as well see what you can. So while we were in Porto Alegre, though, they did quite a lot of activities for us. There were talks, interviews, there was book signing, they had podcasts. So they really maximized our 2 days there for Maya and myself to do their best to promote us as authors and our books to the public, to the Brazilians. So the question arises then, how are we perceived? How are Filipino authors, publishers perceived in global spaces? And I will be honest with you. Most people know very little about the Philippines. When I was in Brazil, it was like they didn't know where the Philippines, so they had a vague notion it was there in Asia, and they were actually quite surprised to hear the story about Ferdinand Magellan, who's Portuguese, the whole thing about the Spanish colonization, because Brazil was also colonized by Portugal at the same time that the Philippines was. So they found that very interesting, and they were very fascinated with things like the piña cloth. It was such a big deal. They were admiring it and very impressed that this is coming from pineapple leaves, fiber, and they laughed because when I referred to it as camisa, apparently it's also camisa in their language. So the crux of it is that, and it's not just in Brazil, but I have been in other places. As I mentioned to you, I was also in Barcelona and in Santiago de Compostela on behalf of PEN. And even though the Spaniards may have remembered or know a little bit about the colonization, aside from that, it's kind of like it ends there. Maybe they'll know adobo and lumpia and pancit, and they are familiar of Filipino caregivers because but in terms of our literature and culture and stuff, not very much. Well, they know that our women are beautiful. That's always always mentioned, but in terms of literary arts. So it's a challenge to us who to be in this global space, to have people really not know very much. When my publishers publish these books, that's a risk for them because they have to sell these books, and they are selling really books from a country that their own people know very little about. My publisher had told me that the books that he had published were basically going to inform Brazilians about Philippine culture and history. That's kind of a tall order. But he liked it so much, and he even he will be translating 3 more books of mine into Portuguese. But that's kind of not the usual thing, because publishing really is a business. And so when you're publishing something, you want to be able to sell it. So this is why in this item, some publishers publish commercial works that sell. Well, that's basically why we will see names like Patricia Evangelista or Maria Ressa, because they have works that will sell, and so the commercial books will sell. However, I have been around for enough time to know that these commercial books, when they stop selling, they will remainder them. Remainder the titles means they remove them from the shelves and they will no longer sell them. So this is what happens. In the global arena, there are some international literary arts organizations, academic institutions that have conferences, talks, residencies, publications that allow for cross-cultural exchange of ideas. And there are some publishers that publish works and translations, that's their specialty, from other countries. There are not too very many of them. And so then it's a matter of finding them. And the reason that, and I lucked out because I had an agent, but even just finding an agent is not easy. So, I mean, just an ordinary writer out here thinking, I'd like to be published in Britain, to blindly be submitting your work over there is going to be quite a lot of I would say useless, but you're going to be churning away and probably getting a lot of rejections. I wanted to tell you, I wanted to give you advice and a little story. Um, my advice to young Filipino authors is do not look for validation from foreign publishers. This is a thing that I have noticed that Filipino writers aspire, many aspire to be published in America or in other places. It's a big deal, you know. Or I think there's some publishing house over in Southeast Asia, Penguin, and it's like, I'm published by some. It's nice, but I'll talk a little bit more about it later on, but I would advise against it. I'm going to tell you a story about Wilfredo Niledo's novel, But for the Lovers. I don't know if you remember him, and probably not, or have heard about him from your literature classes, but Wilfredo Noledo was a writer who went to the United States on a scholarship, Fulbright, I believe, in 1965. And he was studying over at the Iowa Writers School, which is a very fine school. And his novel, But for the Lovers, was published by E.H. Hutton, an American publishing house, a fairly big one. This was back in 1965, around there. Well, that was very wonderful and a very big deal for a Filipino writer to be published in the United States. But what happened, as I mentioned to you, after the book stopped selling, they basically killed it. E.H. Hutton removed it from the shelf. It was remaindered. That's the term, remaindered. So then it was dead for a little while, but eventually in 1990s, another publishing house, Dalkey, I believe, picked it up and published it in the United States. And then that one also went out of print because it's hard to sell books, especially literary books. I'm telling you this because what happened was, even though Wilfredo Noledo's book was published in the United States and was a big deal at the time and notable, so on and so forth, it was not easily accessible in the Philippines. So the end result of that was that it sort of was unknown here. It lapsed into oblivion. Only the elites, only the academics who had access to this had heard of Wilfredo Noledo. But the rest, it was not talked about in the literary, it was not part of the literary conversation. So it was not really until 2024 when Mara Coson of Exploding Galaxies picked up But for the Lovers and reissued it. She reprinted it again. She calls it the Forgotten Novel. She had a kind of like a forgotten novel series there, including Linda T. Casper's book. So I mention that because this business of looking for validation from foreign publishers can be double-edged. Okay, so you're like a little famous for a little while in the United States, and then your own people can't even buy the books and can't read you. It's something to think about. And it's something I have thought about. So, wanted to get into what opportunities and challenges arise when representing Philippine literature abroad. I mentioned to you, very people know little about the Philippines. And here's the thing, because publishing is a business, these publishers put money into this, it doesn't just, they're not just, they weigh it. They want to make sure that they can get their money back and that they will actually make some money if possible. It's difficult. It's difficult. There are very few opportunities and challenges then to be out there in this international field and to hope to be a bestseller and so on and so forth. Another thing, I have news for you. There's only 1% of writers who become bestsellers. 1%. Most of them have to have another job, whether it's teaching or they're supported by their spouses. That's a reality. In the past, it was 10%. It's gotten worse. It's now 1%. So an agent helps, but an agent is just as difficult to find as it is a publisher. So what I want to really advise people, writers, beginning writers, and others is to not focus on this idea of making it big in some other countries, but to write the best stories you can, to find the right publisher for your stories, and you do not need international validation. I strongly feel that if you're writing Filipiniana books, history books about the Philippines and so on, I feel that those stories belong to the Filipino people. And I think that our head should be turned towards the Philippines more than looking outward, hoping that we will make it, we will be famous in wherever, America or wherever we think will validate or give you credibility. That is what I think. Is it worth it to participate in international fairs? So I think it is important to participate in international literary events for exchange of ideas and cross-cultural exchange. It is not good for countries and cultures to isolate themselves. We become provincial, we become ignorant. However, I think the cost of involvement must be considered. I mention this because the Frankfurt Book Fair cost 186 million pesos. 186 million pesos, and they got 185 translations. Now, one can say, well, we shared our culture, there was, this and that. Perhaps, but the point I want to get across is that there are actually different kinds of participation in these international fairs. There are the book fairs that are sort of like Porto Alegre or the Los Angeles Book Fair, where authors, publishers are highlighted. They're promoted. That's their thing, and book selling. Actually, the Frankfurt Book Fair, that's not their shtick. Their shtick is to sell rights. And that's really what it is, that they tell you that. And so for us to think we are going to be showcasing our authors there, we're going to be selling, it's not the venue. It is not the venue to look for literary agents. It's not the venue for authors to be looking for publishers. In fact, these literary agents and scouts and publishers who are running around the first 3 days to get their wheeling dealing done get very irritated when some author comes along and bugs them about can you take a look at my novel? Do you want to, publish my novel? Do you want to be my agent? It just isn't the place. So I question very much this 186 million. And let's just look at the breakdown. So the Philippines paid about 20 million to the fee. The pavilion itself is the space where main events happen, was 68.4 million pesos. The Philippine stand cost 21.5 million, plus there was an additional stand for the comic cost for comic stand 1.2 million. So these are millions. These are millions that we're talking about. The 100 plus grantees, the ones who were funded, cost about 20 million pesos. There was the German media who was hired aside from the 20 funded Filipino media for 7 million. And so it adds up. And so this 180 million includes several trips abroad, not just Frankfurt. It included a trip to Bologna. It included a trip to France. It included a trip to there was an Asian rights fair. I don't know if this was Dubai. There was some other thing, and in Leipzig, and there was another trip to Frankfurt. This was supposedly part of the guest of honor celebration. That was expense. So this is what happened. Shortly after the Frankfurt Book Fair, the Nisei Asia came out with an article with the headlines that said Frankfurt Book Fair highlights Philippines literacy crisis. So that was what the Nikkei Asia wrote about, because despite all the supposed glamour and so on and so forth, it actually highlighted the issues in our home, which is that 24 million Filipinos aged 10 to 64, 24 million, that's enough to fill a country in Europe, are functionally illiterate. By the way, the Philippine Star also came out with an issue about it, about this, January 1, and the Development Aid UN report came out about it, May 21. So these are the three, at least three, there are more, who have written about our literacy rate that is quite dismal. 5.8 million illiterate Filipinos. 1 in 5 high school graduates are functionally illiterate, and 18.9 struggle with basic skills of reading, writing, arithmetic, comprehension. So while I am grateful that I participated in these book fairs, these are some of my thoughts about Philippine participation on this international level. If you're going to be participating in it, the cost has to be considered. The cost, if you are going to be spending government funds, as happened at the Frankfurt Book Fair, is spending 186 million pesos of government funds really the right thing to do? To spend all that in a place that's really basically for rights selling, and they got 185 translations out of it. To me, it doesn't make sense. Could the money have been better spent ensuring Filipino students get better education and that Philippine schools and homes have books? Is it better to focus our energies and resources on helping our own people rather than to try to make it big in the global literary stage at that cost on government funds? And how relevant is it really for us? So these are thoughts. I don't know if I have like the firm answers about them. As I said, it's a matter of cost. And if a publisher decides, I want to participate in the Los Angeles Book Fair, it's going to cost so much, but I expect I will sell so much. That is on that publisher to decide that and to spend the money. But for our government to spend this amount, I have to question it. So I think with that, I'm checking to see if I've missed anything else. I think we can, I think, go on to Q&A, and then we can expand on this, or we can, if you have other questions, let's take a look at them. So I'm gonna get out of here somehow. Let me see here. Jiao, I need your help as to how to get out of this PowerPoint.
It's the red button, ma'am. On the top,
On the
stop share.
top.
Stop
Okay,
share.
I got it. It was covered by that you're recorded. Okay, I got it. Okay. So yeah. So let's talk.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brainard, for that very enlightening lecture. And since we are very eager for our set of questions, I would like to ask you, ma'am, for these questions sent to us personally. The
Yes.
first question will be, if it's okay, I will read it for you.
Okay.
To what extent do international book fairs genuinely create space for marginalized or regional literatures? And where do they fall short?
So this is what I was trying to express to you. They don't even know. They hardly know our culture and us. And now I have to tell you that they may be interested in folk tales, for instance, or myths and epics, if they're looking, or history, if it's the right publisher looking for that sort of thing. I know I see Marie over there, and World War II is there are publishing houses there that will look at that, not just in the Philippines but all over, because there was World War II all over the world. So it's that sort of thing. But for us to think that our Cebuano poetry or whatever, that there's a market out there, there may be, but it's not going to be easy to find. It's very possible because, as I mentioned to you, there are some presses that do look for different voices, but there are not too many of them. And generally, they would be small presses. And again, it's that business of how to find them. So, me, frankly, that's why I'm telling people, don't look there. Look towards the Philippines. If you have Cebuano stories, if you have Cebuano poetry, we have Cebuanos, we have Visayans who read. Our problem is we need a publishing house. So that's something that we should be addressing. So we have our own issues in the Philippines. And so instead of looking out for other countries, other cultures to solve it, I think we need to look inward and try to solve and share with our own people. I showed the picture of that little boy doing his homework on the street. It just flashed in one of those slides. And I showed it precisely because because we have children like that who want those stories, who want to be educated, who want the opportunities. And so why do we want Americans to be reading our work, or whoever, I don't get it. I'm not saying I'm not grateful for the opportunities I have had, but somewhere along the line, I did not want to be like Wilfredo Noledo, who was big in the United States and forgotten in the Philippines because nobody could buy his book. At some point, because my first book was published by Dutton Penguin, which is a big publishing house. But I figured, you know what? I am going to look for Philippine, and I have done that because I want my books accessible to the Filipinos because I think those stories belong to them. But as things turn out, now there are other countries that have picked up the books. You just don't know. But I did not actively look to be published in Brazil or in Japan, or that was not my first goal. My first goal was to write the best stories that I could, try to get the right publisher for it. It did not matter if it was a small publishing house. as long as it was reputable and would take care of it and not just like get rid of it. And so that is sort of how I have been operating. And I'm not saying that's the right way, because obviously there are people who have there. I will tell you, there are Filipino romance writers and whatever who have done all right. Of young adults who have done okay in the United States. Um, I mean, they've done commercial books and they're doing okay. Um, but yeah, that's how I stand.
Thank you, Miss, for that very eye-opening answer. And yes, the market is here among us talaga, and we just need to propagate it, and considering the amount of money being spent just for maybe some of the money could have gone here, as you mentioned po.
Well,
Yes.
I will tell you, and I
Yes.
forgot to mention it. We have a national artist. I won't mention his name. Uh, he was invited to go to Frankfurt, and he declined. He and a companion were going to get all expenses paid, sort of thing. He declined because he said he had plenty of work to do in the Philippines, and I think he genuinely thought it was just a waste of money.
Oh,
And he was really a very conscientious man who did not think it was right to waste money like that. So yeah, I have high regard for him. Now I have to tell you, I went, so I was, but I had to go. I had my publishers there. I could not go. We had to launch those books. So
we have a question, Miss, from the audience from Sir Rafael Dean Polinar. It
yes.
reads, Ma'am Brainard, how did the reader interactions differ between Frankfurt Book Fair and Porto Alegre? Were the questions from the audiences different?
Ah, now the well, that's kind of an interesting question. I was in 4 panels in Frankfurt, and the one panel I was with Jessica Safra and a woman from Indonesia, and the topic was about literature of women in the global South. And so there were quite interesting questions about that. And they were asking, so that was more pointed. It was more pointed about literature by women. And so they were very curious. This is another thing that the Germans are curious about, how we're writing in English and how does that work? So that was we had to respond to that, so that was an interesting question. They just didn't get how we could write in English when it's like, are we translating this or what? And so they had to be informed that really most of us are trilingual from the time we are children, and that some, as Jessica and myself are, we're comfortable writing in English. That's just how it is. We in fact, Bisaya man gyud ko, pero my writing in English is actually more elegant. My Bisaya is very plebeian. Kana bang pangdaan lang. So, you know what I mean? So that was the kind of questions because of the panel topic. So that was, but so the what happened in Porto Alegre was that the woman from Cairo and I were something of a novelty there, and so they were more curious about our cultures and the books we wrote reflecting these cultures. And so that's how they got into the history and the culture. And they were also interested in the language, but not too much. Frankly, it was very interesting because we had a translator. So I don't know if you saw that picture where I had this ear thing. So the question would be in Portuguese, and the translator would tell it to us in English, and then but it was simultaneous, so it was a little bit crazy. So then you had to talk, and then so it was three-way kind of thing. There were some people uh, in Brazil who were kind of interested in the politics. Um, uh, so they were asking about that. But aside from that, it also revolved around our stories and the books that were being promoted there. So how different is it? I don't know if there's a great deal of difference. It probably more had to do with the topic and what kind of audience was drawn there. Obviously, if you're talking about a certain thing, then the questions are going to be arising from that topic. So I don't know if that helps the person.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Okay.
And we have another question in the chat box. I'd like to read it out loud. I have a question for Mrs. Brainard. Given her comment on the funds spent for the Philippine delegation at the book fair, which doesn't sit well with her, what does she suggests for the government agencies in terms of allocation and utilization for the promotion of Philippine literature from Dr. Christian, I apologize if I pronounce it wrong, Lisen or Lyken?
Oh, I think I know him. Okay. I don't have a pat answer because I'm not the one handling budget, and I don't know how much money is being allocated to activities in the Philippines, because I know that they have activities, like the Manila Festival and so on and so forth. So I cannot say. But what I am just saying is that there was a kind of an excess of, in a sense, those there was a lot of spending that I think could have been trimmed. I mean, was it necessary to have 20 media people funded who basically were doing PR work when you already had, aside from their own, what I mean? So that was 20, but then there was also the media, and so there were these things. And was it necessary to spend, I forget how much for that pavilion. That pavilion did not look like very much, but it was costing, was it 20 million? I forget, 18 million or 20 million. It's a huge sum for things that look like, I don't know what they were actually. They were not particularly conducive to even when visitors went in there, you didn't know where to go because they were supposedly like islands, but there was no focal point. But in any case, so that was it. Yes, I can't say exactly how it should have been spent, but I think that it's not necessary to have 6 trips to Bologna and to I don't know where, uh, to try and get translations. My agent got 14 translations. You know, what it is that agents have the contacts and they know where to go and they know, um, so it's their business. But for us to have to seek out and go to other places with a group of 12 to try and get 10 translate, I don't know how many translations they get out there. So in any case, so those are some of this. Is that Christian? Yeah, Lyson. Yes. Hi, Christian.
Hello, madam. Thank you.
That's okay.
See you again.
I apologize again for possibly mispronouncing the name. Uh,
No problem.
yes, Miss. You've mentioned earlier the topic of translation. I have a question myself as a literature student.
Yes.
Translation is a major in our course. Uh, in the course of translating your works in several languages, what were the challenges present during the translation process itself? Is there a particular language that proved itself to be most difficult in portraying or getting the idea of Philippine culture across or translating across the Philippine culture itself?
Okay, I'm not, can you clarify your question? I'm not sure.
Ah, yes, miss. You have your works translated in several different languages. Yes. And
Yes.
is there a particular language that has proven itself to be the most difficult to translate Philippine culture into, to portray Philippine culture into, maybe for the lack of words or concepts?
Okay. So here's the process. Let me explain to you what happened. So a foreign publisher expressed interest in my work. So they get it. They have the rights to translate it into Portuguese or into Arabic or to some other country. They get the manuscript and they prefer English because they have their own translator who will work from the English into Arabic or from the English into Japanese. So in fact, it is a problem for them if it is not in English. So if it's not English, they will want it in English first so that they can work from it. So that's how it works. I was not participant in the actual translating of it. Once they got it, it was in their hands. And I don't know really if I have to trust them that the translation is well done because I can't even look at Arabic. I mean, it looks pretty, but I can't read it, you know. So I don't know if that answers your question. So that's it. I mean, if you have some uh, material that is in our dialect, as far as I know, it has to be in English before some foreign publisher can work on it.
Okay, thank you very much for the answer, Miss. And we have another question from Miss. I apologize if I mispronounced the name. Miss Aimee Malonga. Good day, ma'am. Before, as you start in making your book, how did you find your publisher? I am an indie author here in Mindanao, still starting from scratch, and about to launch my 3 self-help books soon that I personally bind. Which is more practical, to self-publish or to look for a publisher?
The way I was trained, there was a kind of a negative feeling about, we called it vanity press. There was always a kind of a negative thing if you just published your own work. So the goal for us, me especially when I was an emerging writer, was to find somebody, so to find a publisher. Having said that, I had friends who were poets, and poets really have a hard time finding publishers, and they did self-publish, but they did not make it obvious. They took on another name, whatever the whatever house. So it was not clear that this was published by, Amy Yu. It was it but they did it and they were okay. It did not ruin their reputation. Um Nowadays, because there is, I guess, more ease in terms of actually getting our books done, I'm not sure that there is such a great deal of stigma to having to self-published books. My instinct probably is still to try and find some other publisher to publish it. And then if nothing happens, to go ahead and self-publish it, you know. But see, the problem there then is the marketing. Because if you're self-publishing it, then you got to market it and all of this. So try. I know it's really hard. It's really very difficult. And again, I mean, if it doesn't work, then they'll self-publish. It's like I said, it does not have the stigma now that it did when I was years ago when I was emerging. So again, the thing to me is just do the best work that you can. Sometimes people get caught up in this and they're just kicking out because they know how to self-publish it, and I saw some of that, and and some of them are really not good, you know. So I think that you really have to push yourself and learn your craft and really work until, and I'm telling you that if it's good, you will find a publisher, really, frankly. um but again, it just is not easy. It wasn't easy for me. It's not easy for anyone, really.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Brainard, for that answer. And here we have another from Christina Madridondo. Good morning, Miss Brainard. Thank you for your edifying talk. It is an eye opener, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to learn about the wider world of book publishing out there. Thank you also for bringing the Philippines to world focus. What do these two fairs reveal about the priorities of the global north versus the global south in publishing? Also, did attending the fairs change how you think about the international book market?
So this is what I learned. They look for good stories. I mean, they got my novels and my selected short stories because they liked the stories. Um, and then maybe the pre thing to that is that my agent really liked my work, and then then she's the one who's like marketing it, and they trust my agent, and they said sure. Um, but I think publishers anywhere will want good work. They want books that will sell, and then they want good work, and sometimes it will go together and sometimes not. So that's why sometimes you will have bestsellers that are not necessarily literary, um, romances maybe, or some other kind of books, but they will be published because they will sell. Um, but then there are some publishing houses that will really look for fine work. So that's what I learned, whether it's here or there. Um, that's what they're looking for. I forget what the second part of the question was. What did I learn?
I would like to I'll read it again, Miss.
Yeah. This is,
Did attending the fairs change how you think about the international book market?
so yeah, it kind of has in a sense. Um, well, it just makes me realize again that uh, this is a business. Publishing is a business. So even these publishers that took on my work, they chose it carefully, and it's with the intention of they're not going to just keep it in their garage. They hope to sell it. So that's it. I mean, so we writers believe in our work, and we think we try to make works of art, or really fine things, and in a kind of ironic way, then it must be judged in terms of, will this sell? And that's just the reality of it. I have to point out that I have to admire my Japanese publisher, because the translator was an academic who had done a paper on me, and he really liked my first novel, When the Rainbow Goddess Wept, which is a World War II novel. And he wanted to translate it, and he found a publisher. Apparently, it's not easy to find a Japanese publisher publishing World War II books, because of the history. They don't really want to remember that history. But my translator and publisher have this commitment. Now, this is the thing, it's sometimes you luck out and you find this kind of publishing house that's just not going to do it for money. They have a commitment to educating the younger Japanese about the realities of World War II. So to me, that was very special. That was it. It was kind of like their mission to do that book. So yeah, I'm not sure what I learned about it. What I learned is that this is lovely, but I am not going to I'm not going to gear my life looking for foreign publishers. If it happens, that's fine, but I'm going to continue again trying to do what I can with my stories, and trying to serve our readers. I see a note here from Hope. If you could bring one element or of one element of Porto Alegre to Frankfurt or vice versa, what would it be? What element of Porto? Um, well, the thing is, I really enjoyed the community spirit in Porto Alegre Book Fair. But then there are only 20,000 people. And I am not sure that you can have that feeling in a place with 200,000 people. And also, the energy just is different because the other one was like kind of cozy and friendly and in Porto Alegre, and they took care of us. They picked us up at the airport. We had an escort the whole time. And Frankfurt was a little more like you're on your own. It's a huge place where you have to find a place. So I am not sure about that, but I did appreciate very much that the warmth and that community spirit that was at the Porto Alegre Book Fair. So I'm not sure. I'm seeing questions in here. Thank you. Where do you personally? Oh, okay, you take care of it, Art. What question next?
It's okay, Miss. But I'll read it for you, Lala, the question you've chosen.
Sige, sige.
Thank you for your very insightful talk, Ma'am Cecilia. Where do you personally feel your work fits best? In industry spaces like Frankfurt or public spaces like Porto Alegre or both? Do you also feel positioned differently as an author in each setting?
Um, I went to Frankfurt because I had business there and because I had a purpose. I was not just gonna go there just to I don't know what. When you go to Frankfurt, you're going to Frankfurt for a reason. And that was it. I went there because I had publishers there and I had an agent there. And so that's why I went. I I now as a delegate, when Hope and I went in 2024, we were delegates and we were kind of learning the ropes, and we had the opportunity to give talks and to meet. There was a lot of networking among Filipinos. Um, very little with others, really. It was for some reason we were kind of in our own little pocket, and that was also okay. I really bonded with Hope at that time. And so that was very lovely. And I have to say, then I had the opportunity of meeting my agent, which was very important. But Porto Alegre actually feels a little bit like Cebu. It's small, it's a port place. It's a kind of place where you can walk around. It has some colonial buildings. So it feels to me a little bit homey. Um, so it's a different experience. What element of Porto Alegre? Um, the warmth and that personal caring that they offered, that the organizers offered, were really very nice. And if that could be brought into Frankfurt, the kind of warmth and personal caring of the delegates, rather than to just sort of, there are very many delegates. You have 400 delegates who really didn't have, many of them did not have a real purpose there. So that was kind of difficult, and everybody was sort of trying to find a bit of attention, a promo or whatever. So that was not necessary to have 400 delegates. Did I mention to you that Slovenia, for instance, had only 70, and other countries in past guest of honors, they only had 50, uh, 50, 70, 75. Czech Republic next year will have 50, a delegation of 50. We had 400. So in other words, magulo, people just milling around without any purpose. So so the warmth and the personal caring went down the toilet. So if you had any other questions?
Yes, ma'am. We still have several here. I'd like to sort them through. From Sir Victor Uy. Thank
Yeah.
you for this opportunity about to hear about your experiences in the fairs. Did you have a conversation at one of the fairs that stayed with you long after?
Did I have a conversation that stayed with me long after? Well, I have to say that because I spent a lot of time with the Egyptian woman in Brazil, that we it stays with me because we talked not only about personal things but about literature and how she wrote, and so we were exchanging ideas about literature. So that was very nice. In terms in from Frankfurt, was there any conversation? I bonded. I met my publishers, and even though we were rushed for time and I just saw them for 2 days because that's how Frankfurt is, 1, 2, 3 days, they're gone. Um, we bonded and I got to know a little bit of them and how wonderful their spirits are. And I'm not sure it was really one particular conversation, but just being with these 9 publishers who did my work and hearing uh, and knowing them a little bit was very memorable and very lovely. So those are and I have to say that my Brazilian publisher and his family were just really very charming and very, very delightful. I don't know if all Brazilians are like that, but they were very, very warm. And that's what I kept mentioning that also in Porto Alegre, they were very warm. Um, they just they were very nurturing in terms of making sure that we were okay and we were fine, and very, very lovely people, really. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss. And we have another question from Miss Marie Vallejo. I will.
Yes.
My topic is World War II, a nonfiction and researched work. I self published and self market in the Philippines and the US. Satisfying. What further advice can you give?
Hi, Marie. um there is a market for this kind of book, but I see, if I had a book like that, I would not look at the big publishing houses. I would look specifically for publishers that publish history books. And so I don't know in the US if there might be those, and maybe very specifically World War II, because it is a very big topic. Um, but I think that if you're doing fine in the Philippines, that's gonna be your main audience, I think. If they can find it in Amazon, I don't know what your setup is. Um, so if you can get that available in Amazon, and then you're doing the promo and inform specifically World War II museums or World War II historians and so on, then they can know where to find it. Um, so I'm not sure it's necessary for you to get another publishing house. I think if you get another publishing house, um, I'm not sure what they can offer unless it's like a really big house, but it's also very difficult to get a big publishing house. But one focus on World War II may not be a big house. So I think you're doing fine.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
I
Yeah.
think it's a matter of promo, to get the ones abroad to know how to get your books.
Okay, thank you. It's been satisfying here in Manila. It seems that they have more interest here. And so I thought it would be in the US, but I found out that it's more in Manila. That's the interest. And it was quite a discovery. So I'm continued to push that in
Yeah.
universities, museums, and everything like that. And then
Do
in the
you
US, yeah.
Is it like I asked, is it available in Amazon?
Yes, actually, I have East Wind Books of Berkeley.
No.
They're providing it. And
Oh,
so that helps for the US market because it's just my advocacy. I'm satisfied
yeah,
with that.
yeah,
I'm a
yeah.
senior, once it's on the library books of everywhere, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
And
No,
it's grateful to be able to do it.
no, I think you're doing great. And I think so that's it. I don't think it's necessary to republish it. But I think what you can do since you're set up is just promote it. So all you have to do is inform those people outside the country to buy it. But again, as I mentioned to you, sometimes turning inward instead of outward, we've got a lot. We there's a big market there, and they are the
Yeah.
ones hungry for it. And
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. I noticed
So
abroad, they're quite hungry, especially the Filipinos abroad. They're quite hungry about it. So,
yeah,
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 yeah.
good.
I'll just connect with you afterwards with a couple more. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Marie. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
All right. It is a very, very lively discussion with the audiences talaga. It's much more entertaining considering all the questions that I've been through. Diba, miss? Yes. Is there anyone else in the audience? The open forum is still open for questions if you would like to ask in the chat box. And I would like to ask Miss Brainard if she has any more sentiments to add on her topic or any more comments that she would like to include as we further on the program.
So I'm not sure what. So um, but I just wanted to emphasize that it. My point about the book fairs is really that there are several types of them, and so it's a matter of choosing where you wish to participate and what that particular book fair offers you. I see a question of Marie. She had a World War II and she didn't go to Frankfurt. And I'm not sure, Marie, that Frankfurt would have been the right thing for you in terms of marketing that book. You know? Yeah.
That's what I was
Because
worried
as I
about.
described it, it's not the right place to look for a publisher. It's not the right place to look for an agent. That
Yeah.
it doesn't work there. So it's kind of knowing that. And the other thing about the money, um, I just feel that government funds, given the situation of the literacy rate in the Philippines, must be carefully weighed as to where the funds should go. I'm not saying this is bad. I'm just saying that we got to consider then, is it really worth all that much? Is it, to sink it with this big pavilion, this several trips, this
Mhm.
bring the guests to Boracay and all these other lovely things that were going on. Are those expenses justified when we've got children working their homework in the street to get some light from the street lamp? That's really what I want to say.
Thank
Okay.
you very much, Miss Brainard. That was a very eye-opening talaga and very sobering to the realities we face with Philippine literature. And ladies and gentlemen, as much as we would like to air all your questions, we are unfortunately pressed for time. Thank you so much for the audience who have asked. And if you have any more questions you would like to ask to the speaker, kindly message the Cebuano Studies Center page on the Facebook so we could forward them to our very illustrious speaker for today.
I,
And
I also don't mind if you email me. So you can, I see some questions and I'm sorry I did not read the chat, but you can email me directly and I don't mind. cbrainard@gmail.com and I will answer you.
thank you very much, Miss. We will take note of that. And now, to show our deepest appreciation to our esteemed lecturer, we would like to present our certificate of appreciation to be read by Sir Jao Dasi.
Oh,
So,
thank
hello again, everyone. Good morning. Thank you, Miss Cecilia, for your very insightful and engaging talk this morning. So, to show our humble appreciation, we'd like to present you with this certificate of appreciation. Allow me to read its contents. The University of San Carlos Cebuano Studies Center presents this certificate of appreciation to Cecilia Manguerra Brainard for her invaluable lecture entitled One-on-One with author Cecilia Manguerra Brainard about the Frankfurt and Porto Alegre Book Fairs during the Vicente Sotto Lecture Series 2026, given this 9th day of January via Zoom. signed by the Director of the Cebuano Studies Center, Dr. Hope Yu, and the Vice President for Academic Affairs of USC. So once again, thank you very much, Ma'am Brainard.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Salamat. Also, we prepared the same certificate for our lively moderator this morning. Thank you, Mr. Ark, for facilitating our session this morning. So this certificate of appreciation is also signed by Dr. Hope Yu and Father Jasuraj Antonio Pen. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, Ms. Brainard, and thank you to everyone. Before we wrap things up, I'd like to remind everyone one last time to fill out the evaluation form, link in the chat box below, so you can avail your certificate of participation for this event. Before we end, may we request everyone, or as many participants as possible, to turn on their videos for the group photo. We would like to see the beautiful faces, the smiles of everyone who participated in our very first lecture in 2026.
Okay, so I'll be in charge of the photo op. So if your internet allows, kindly turn on your cameras. Let's try to capture this moment. Okay, so I'll start. 3, 2, 1, smile. Okay, can have one more. 3, 2, 1, smile. Okay, daghang salamat everyone. I'll give you back to Art.
Thank you, Mom Baby.
Thank you, Hope. Thank you, Art, Jao. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Have a great day. I'm going to sleep soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. All
Hope to
right,
see
so
you in future installments. Sorry, Art.
It's okay, sir. We wish everyone to have a good day and Ms. Brainard to have a wonderful evening and good night.